Alrighty, Cinco de Mayo. Y'all having tacos tonight? Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo. Okay, every class today I've had somebody join who is not supposed to be in that class. All right, Desiana, this is sixth period. You should be in a different class right now. Everybody's working so hard, they're all confused. Not a problem. See you later. All righty, we are going to look at pest control today. So if you want to um, go in Canvas and get a head start look at that, pest control is 5.6. Okay, and remind y'all again, those of you who are taking the AP exam, I put in the announcement for that in the announcements. So I'll show you that in a second because they wanted to make sure that you knew the date, the time, the location. Okay. Okay, you hang on there. Let me get here. Do that there. So many things to click on. Alrighty. So we're going to be doing pest control. But before I do that, I want to make sure that you see the announcement. I think they emailed everybody, but I also wanted to make sure that you um, so in the announcements, uh, they have, excuse me, posted. So for environmental science, it is May 15th in the wrestling room. You need to arrive by 7:30. Test starts at 8. They don't let you in after that. It's a 2 hour and 40-minute test. And then they give you a map of the school. There's north side and tell you where to park and where to go. Okay. Bring a fully charged Chromebook and charger. Phones, Apple Watches, and watches that make noise and AirPods and all those things are prohibited. Bring a water bottle with a cap and closed container to keep on the floor next to your desk. Okay. If you're for you guys, because it says for entering the wrestling room, enter from the main entrance at map A, and students who are scheduled for exams in the auditorium should enter in the lobby, map B. So this is your map for the wrestling room, because that's where you'll be taking yours. All right, so it is right here in the announcements, just so that you have it. I just oh wow, a phone in the bottom of her shoe. Yeah, it's a serious thing these days. We have so much technology. I mean, um, if you're in public school before they take an exam, we got to be standing at the door with a basket collecting phones, checking your watch, scanning everything. And it's crazy. Testing is so serious these days. So it'd be like the airport. Now you got to take off your shoes. Wow. All right, but don't do that, folks. You be serious, because you pay for these exams, or in this case, some of you might have gotten this one free, but still, it leaves a bad mark, and it hinders you from doing that test again. So be honest, be honest, be honest. Cheating is not a good thing, because they're wise to everything these days, and especially with, like I said, with AI and technology and all this stuff, that got lockdown browsers and all kinds of things. And so just plan to go in there with your best mind and be prepared for the exam, and just know that you got it. You got it. You've been preparing for this for a year. All right, so pest control, I think we got most folks in today. um Okay, so he's going to go through all of these types of pest controls, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides. And even with this, all of this technology has, while it's good for the crop, it is not necessarily good for us, because uh, it gets into places where it shouldn't get to. The organisms wise up, and they adapt to the chemicals, and we got to get stronger chemicals, and stronger chemicals are not good for us. All right, they get in our water system, air system, everything. So not good, not good, not good. All right, so like I said, I believe all who are intending to be on time are here. Come on, move out the way. Okay.
Which is pest control. So pesticides are a really effective way to control pests in the short term. They may minimize the amount of crops you lose, and they may maximize profits. But we're going to talk today about unintended consequences of using pest control. So one of them we already know, we can see it kind of demonstrated here as this crop duster flies over the fields, is we can kill unintended target species with pesticides. Another problem, though, which we'll talk about, is this idea of pesticide resistance. And so we've got a superbug up in the corner of the screen there to represent that pests can actually become resistant to the pesticides designed to kill them. Our objective for the day is to be able to describe the benefits and drawbacks of pest control. And we need to know that pests can develop what's called pesticide resistance over time if pesticides are overapplied, and also that GMOs can be a solution to reduce pesticide use, but they can result in biodiversity loss, and that brings some problems we'll talk about. And then finally, the science skill that we'll practice is proposing a... So first we'll talk about pesticides. Pesticides are chemicals that are toxic to pests, and pests are just organisms such as rodents or fungi that may harm crops. And so what we can see here is that we have different pesticides for different types of organisms. We have rodenticides to kill rodents, we have insecticides for insects, herbicides for plants, and fungicides for fungi. And while pesticide use may over the short term decrease the pests that attack crops and increase profits, there are some longer term consequences. Over time, overuse of pesticides can cause the pests to actually evolve resistance. So because there's genetic diversity in the pest populations, some of them naturally have genetic mutations which give them adaptations that allow them to survive the pesticide. And so over time, pesticide use will actually artificially select for resistant genes in the population. It'll kill all of the organisms that do not have genetic resistance to the pesticide, but it will leave behind only the ones that do have genetic resistance. So over time, the entire population will evolve genetic resistance to that pesticide. Now, we call this effect the pesticide treadmill, because it's this never-ending cycle of having to constantly develop new pesticides because the pests become resistant to the old ones. If we look at a graph here of Bt corn use over time, remember that Bt corn is genetically modified to produce its own insecticide within the corn. That's going to actually cause resistant species to increase. So the more we use Bt corn, in effect, the more we arm our corn with its own insecticide, the more insects are evolving resistance to this. So now we'll talk about genetic modification, which is another method of pest management. So in genetic modification, the genes of the crop are actually altered to have a gene that codes for a resistant trait added to their genome. So we have the example of Bt corn. In Bt corn, this corn has actually been given a bacterial gene that allows it to make a Bt crystal, which is a type of protein that kills caterpillars and other corn pests. Then we have Roundup Ready soybeans and other crops. These are crops that have a genetic modification that allows them to resist Roundup, which is a really potent herbicide. So in effect, farmers can spray their field with large amounts of Roundup, killing the weeds, but not damaging their Roundup Ready soybeans. If we take a look at this diagram here, this helps us understand a little bit better how the bacterial resistant gene actually helps the Bt corn. So we can see there's a caterpillar that's munching on that corn leaf, but when we take the gene out of the bacteria and put it into the corn, each plant cell within the corn actually has this Bt crystal gene in it now, and so the plant cells are able to manufacture their own Bt crystals, which will repel the caterpillars from eating them and basically acts as a built-in pesticide. Now we'll talk about the impact that GMOs can have on pesticide use. So in the case of Bt corn, it's actually decreased the amount of pesticide that's used, as we can see in the graph here, and that's because basically the corn is manufacturing its own insecticide. They're making these Bt crystals within their cells, and then the caterpillars or the other pests that try to eat the corn die, and the corn is protected from the pest. So in the blue, we have insecticide use. In the green, we have the percent of the acreage that has Bt crops on it. And so as Bt crop percentage is rising, we see insecticide is steadily going down. They have an inverse relationship. So the more Bt corn we're planting, the less insecticide we're using on that Bt corn. That makes sense because the insecticide is basically built in. So in this case, GMOs can decrease pesticide use. However, in the case of Roundup Ready crops, GMOs have actually increased herbicide use. And so in this case here, we can see in 1996, when Roundup Ready crops were introduced, we have a steady rise in the amount of herbicide that's used. And remember, that's because these crops are resistant to the herbicide glyphosate, which is a really broad category of herbicide. So since cotton, soybean, and corn have genes that allow them to resist Roundup, farmers can effectively douse their fields with it with no fear of harming their crops. And so that leads to them using more and more of the Roundup over the years. It's really effective at killing the weeds. It doesn't harm the crops, but there's a lot of unintended consequences. We'll get into that more when we get into our water pollution units. And lastly, today we'll talk about the impact of GMOs on genetic diversity. So GMOs are genetically modified organisms. They are all genetically identical. They're essentially clones of each other. So they have zero genetic diversity. What this means is that if there is a disease or a pest that's able to harm these crops, they're in for catastrophic losses because they don't have any chance of having a genetic mutation in the population that can provide an adaptation that can be advantageous and help them survive. So they're essentially all going to die if there's one disease or pest that can affect them. Whereas if we have a diverse population, as we can see with this potato example here, this diverse crop will have some organisms that are resistant and are able to survive the blight. However, in the cloned potato crop, in the crop that has genetically modified potatoes, they're all going to be genetic clones of one another. So they're all going to be susceptible to this potato blight. And so after the disease, effectively none of them survive. And so think of GMOs as kind of putting all of our eggs in one basket. We're hoping that that genetically modified crop doesn't fall victim to disease or to pest. If it does, though, every single member of that population would be expected to suffer from that pest. On the other hand, crops that are not genetically modified, they have some genetic diversity, so there's the potential that some of the individuals can have a resistant gene and can survive that pest or that disease. Our practice FRQ for topic 5.6 today is to describe one economic advantage and one economic disadvantage of using genetically modified crops. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to like.
All right. Think like a mountain. Think big. All right, and that's something else that you need to think about. Those of you who are taking the test, say more, not less. More is always better. Show them so that they have outside people grading these things, and they have a set mindset as to what the answers should be. So you want to make sure that something you said in your paragraph, they can find something that vaguely resembles what they're looking for in the answer. Okay, even when I grade on the, they give me a rubric, and I look at your answer and I compare your answer to their answer, and I have to decide, is it vaguely close to what they're looking for? So more is better, because somewhere along the way you might actually use the right vocabulary. Please use vocabulary when you're taking these tests. We will have, most of you are seniors, so I'm going to try my very best to have a final quiz for you on Friday. Not a final, but just on this particular topic, not an overall test, but on the part of this unit, that's of Unit 5 that we've done so far. So keep that in mind. So we have done, let me come out of this for a sec. I say that to say that, there we go, hop to it. All right, so you will have a test on, we have done 5.1, 11, and 12, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have not done 14 yet, so I won't put that on there. Okay, so keep these topics in mind for Friday. Okay, like I said, up to 6. I won't put, even though, actually, let me go ahead and show 14, because 14 is part of this as well, and then we'll be done with this. So give me 1 second. Let me do that. And all of those have already been loaded for you in the AP classroom, but I believe there's not a full, okay, let me hold that, bring this back. Yeah, and then we can knock that out and be done with pests. This one is not very long at all, very short.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. Smeeds, and today we'll be covering topic 5.14, which is integrated pest management, or IPM. So integrated pest management is a way to control pests with the goal of minimizing pesticide use and environmental disruption. So we'll talk today about the different methods that are used and the advantages and disadvantages of IPM. So our objective for the day is to be able to describe what integrated pest management is, as well as the benefits and drawbacks that it brings. We'll discuss specific methods like biocontrol, crop rotation, intercropping, and introducing natural predators. We'll also be practicing using data to support a solution at the end of the video. So the name integrated pest management reminds you that it's an integrated way, so a bunch of different methods to control pests while decreasing pesticide use and hopefully decreasing environmental disruption. So it's going to hinge around doing research and monitoring what pests you actually have so that you can make sure that your approaches are targeted specifically to those pests. So you use a whole host of methods, which will involve first catching and identifying which pests you actually have, then taking into account factors like the weather, so you can potentially plan around the pest's natural life cycle. And then once you've identified which pests they are, when they're likely to be breeding, you can start to apply methods such as biocontrols, which could be adding a specific natural predator to your field so that they can take care of the pest themselves. You could use methods like crop rotation, which involve planting different crops in different seasons to disrupt the pest's natural food source. And then you can even use a method called intercropping, which we'll talk more in depth about shortly. So as this name implies, biocontrol is short for biological control, and that involves adding a natural predator, a natural competitor, or a natural parasite to control your pest population. So you can either buy the pest control agent yourself, so you could purchase ladybugs in the mail, or you could plant habitat that will naturally attract predators to your agricultural fields. So some examples here are ladybugs, which are especially effective at controlling aphid populations. You can use spiders to control a wide variety of insect pests. And then also parasitic wasps are especially effective for controlling different species of caterpillars that may attack your crops. Because pests typically have one specific food source that they require, rotating your crops can prevent them from establishing themselves in the soil and just continually feeding on that same crop. Because they lay their eggs in the soil and then the larvae hatch and they need their preferred food source, moving that crop each year so it's a different species will prevent them from establishing in your soil. So we can see here, if we use a 3-year cycle and plant a different crop every year, it's just going to prevent those larvae from having the food source they need and prevent the pest population from becoming established. Another benefit is that by rotating your crops, you can keep your agricultural fields planted for a longer portion of the year, because after you harvest one crop, if you use another crop that is able to be grown in that intermediate period, that's going to prevent weeds from establishing themselves in the bare soil over time. And finally, there's a really neat method called intercropping. So it can be sometimes referred to as a push-pull system. And this is because you're going to use two plants that will strategically deter the pest from your crops. The pull plant is a species that will emit chemicals that attract the pest towards that plant and causes the pest to lay their eggs in that plant instead of near your crops. The push plant is a plant that emits a sort of chemical that will deter the pest from going near your crops. So in this example, we have Desmodium, which is a plant that releases a chemical that deters moths from going towards your crops. Then you have the Napier grass, which emits a chemical that attracts the moths. And so just using the natural chemicals that are secreted by plants, you can deter the moths from going towards the corn and instead favoring the Napier grass as a place to lay their eggs. It can even be used to attract natural predators of the moth. And so the Napier grass emits a chemical that's going to attract natural predators of the moth, and it can provide a habitat for other predators that may prey on other pests. Now we'll look quickly at some of the benefits and the drawbacks of integrated pest management. So the benefits, and really the entire purpose of IPM, is to reduce pesticide use. If you're reducing pesticide use, you should be reducing the deaths and mutations that result in non-target species. So remember that atrazine can cause intersex frogs. We can have eagles whose eggshells will thin and the death of their hatchlings because of DDT. And we are having large colony collapse in bee populations or die-offs in their populations because of an herbicide called glyphosate. So minimizing pesticide use is really beneficial to a number of non-target species. We're also going to reduce the harmful effects on humanity. Many pesticides are known to be carcinogens, meaning they cause cancer, so decreasing their use is going to be really beneficial for human health. And finally, we're going to limit the contamination of our ground and surface waters, which have pesticides washed into them by agricultural runoff. The main drawback of IPM is that unfortunately it is quite time consuming and it can be costly. Now this is because you often have to conduct research and actively monitor the pest populations rather than just selecting a broad pesticide and crop dusting or flying over your fields with a small airplane. And so it does take more time, and oftentimes it takes more money to get it established. Suggested science scale for practice FRQ 5.14 today is to use data or evidence to support a potential solution. So take a look at this graph and then use the data in the graph to justify whether or not these data support the use of biocontrol as a method of limiting pest damage. All right, everybody.
All righty. So that's that. One of the things I like to use is because I like to sit out on my back porch is a citronella plant. A lot of y'all are probably familiar with citronella candles, and that has a special oil inside the candle, and that kind of repels the bugs. But you can actually buy the plant and just sit the plant, and I sit it on buy the plant and sit it on 4 corners of my porch. And mosquitoes don't like that, so I don't have to worry about mosquitoes. But that's a natural pesticide that you can use, citronella plants. And like I said, it'd be easy to remember because most of the candles that they sell you for bugs these days have a citronella scent to it. But plants cheaper and last longer than the candle or the oil. All right, so what you all need to do is make sure you complete that in the AP classroom. So all of those that up to 14 have been opened for you. Complete that. Also, read that section in Canvas and work on anything that you have outstanding that's between today and tomorrow. I think most of you have done your, maybe not 14, but have done most of the other assignments. Okay. And most of you have done the FRQ that was put up for 5.3, 4, and 5. So if you haven't done that, and there's a couple of you who haven't, make sure you get that done. All right, so the last 3 assignments that people are still working on, and I'm still working on going behind those who I haven't graded yet. Like when you turn them in on time, I grade them on time. So I'm still grading people who are still sending me stuff. For the Earth Day Challenge, the gallery walk, so make sure that you have posted yours because you get a grade for posting and a grade for looking at other people's um, projects about Muskogee County. Alrighty, so I will put up the AP Classroom scores for 3, 5, 3, 4, 5, and 6 shortly. I won't put the FRQs that he was just showing you in. So again, Friday, expect a short half unit test. And that will probably be the last test because half of you are seniors. And senior grades are due in by Wednesday. Okay, so please make sure that if there's anything outstanding that you want graded, that you have it in by Wednesday. Next Wednesday, not tomorrow, next Wednesday. Excuse me. There's quite a few of you who have not done your 5.3, 4, and 5. Green Revolution Impacts of Agricultural and Irrigation Methods. So please make sure that you get caught up in the AP classroom. All right, 14 is available, so if you've done everything else, you should be working on 14. And there's quite a few of you who have all 6 assignments in the AP classroom to do. You've let yourself get way behind. Half the class has it all done, half of you have it none done. So if you're in the none group, please get caught up. And again, we are testing basically 1 through 14, omitting the other ones in between on Friday. It will be a Canvas test. It will not be the AP classroom test because that test wouldn't cover units that you have not done. So it will be a Canvas test. All right, lovely folks. Time is up. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll have a study guide for you for the test for Friday. In fact, I'll put it in the folder now for those of you who like to get ahead of things. Um, but that'll be tomorrow's mission is to go over the study guide. All righty. Have a good evening. Happy Cinco de Mayo.